Today, we are going to talk about failing, resilience, and growing your business profits.
Your someday starts today. It's time to explore and test the newest science, methods, and trends for creating a life you love with your host, Tanyamfk. Welcome to My Designed Life.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to My Designed Life, where we learn and test the latest science, tips, tools, strategies, and action steps to create your best life every day. You can find us on YouTube and Instagram at My Designed Life Show and at Tanyamfk, as well as the My Designed Life Show podcast on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, Spreaker, and more. I'm your host, Tanya Marie Figueres-Kreisinger, more easily known as Tanyamfk. And you are here because you know that you get to create the life you want and you're ready to test out new tools to make it the best. Now, today's guest has ridden the roller coaster of entrepreneurship. His parents worked hard owning their own business only to lose everything, including their home. As a child now living in his older sister's basement, he vowed to learn better and become successful. Graduating business school, he joined his parents for bakery round 2 and created a widely successful business, serving clients like Jay-Z and J-Lo. Despite his success, his business also fell apart, and again, he found himself in his sister's basement, only now with a wife and baby on the way. This time, his journey led him to seek what he didn't know. What do the successful companies know that he doesn't? So he decided to work for them. And after a decade of big wins with companies like Google, Microsoft, ADP, Ford, and more, he left the corporate world equipped with knowledge and determination to teach the techniques to others to keep them from their sisters' basements. So here today to share with us how to become resilient in life and business by taking small steps to save money, time, and effort. Please welcome Tony Guarnaccia.
Welcome to My Designed Life.
Welcome, Tony.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm so excited.
Yes, this is going to be great. So I want to dive in. I really want to get into this whole idea of cultivating resilience, as well as the mistakes that you realize you made in business and what us entrepreneurs should be doing instead. But first, let's talk about your definition of resilience and why it's important for us in both our lives and business.
Absolutely. So to me, resilience is really about being able to bounce back. And I think part of it has to do with mindset, because a lot of people have the mindset that you can't fail, like it's bad to fail. But if you look at the best companies in the world, like Google, like Amazon, all these companies, they release products, for instance, and they let them go if they fail, and then they have something else coming out. So they actually build it into their culture that failure is absolutely okay. So that's kind of where I look at that, because you have to be able to move forward and accept defeats, but you're not the one that's being defeated. Maybe your idea was what you tried, and that's okay. And I think that's something that's important to pass down to your employees, your family, your kids, everyone around you. It's okay to fail because you're not done until you quit.
Yes. Oh, I love that. And right out of the gate, this is so strong because I think, especially being a child of the 80s, I think those old, motivational posters and stuff, it was always that, failure's not an option. Like you're going to stick, you're going to push, you're going to make it happen. And with good intention, it came, but it also, like you said, it gave this idea, I think, that we cultivated that, failure was the end all be all. Like it was literally not an option, as they said. So to get there, it must be the absolute worst place to be. And like you said, and I love that you brought that up because it's well documented. Google's like failure culture, like fail fast, fail forward. They are releasing stuff all the time. Yes. That hasn't worked. I mean, Google Glasses, anyone, if you have that, but you know what? Google didn't go, well, guys, that was so bad. And, they're kind of still around if you noticed and they're still going strong. So it's such an important mind shift to adapt, to embrace. And again, I just loved everything you said, just encapsulated so much. But I think the other thing is we almost hear this, it's okay to fail as like a passive thing, like, oh, it's okay. Like, but there's so much strength in being able to embrace that, right? To be able to say, yes, fail. And one last thing on my soapbox here, Ray Dalio, if you guys don't know Ray Dalio, author of Principles, one of the wealthiest hedge fund leaders in the world, he actually explains success as not a trajectory up, but in a spiral of circles. And he says that basically the way he knows he's about to succeed is when he fails, he embraces that. That's like that little down spiral. He's like, okay, that's when I'm going to learn. And then it comes back up. And then he goes down, and he actually sees that as the best trajectory. Because if he's just going up, he's like, oh, the fail's going to be a lot bigger. So let's get those little ones. So yeah, I love that idea of resilience. So what do we do? How do we get there? How do we change our minds to embrace that?
Well, that's a great question. I'll tell you a story. This really comes from my mother. Like, I think where I learned resiliency was truly from her, because she grew up in a time much like today. So as you know, we all have this pandemic going on. Coronavirus is really tearing people apart and just causing havoc. But back in the late 1930s, there was another disease going around, and that was called polio. And unfortunately, at the age of just 9 months old, my mother contracted polio, and she couldn't walk. She couldn't walk from the age of 9 months old all the way up to 14 years. And much like today, quarantine, in a hospital, couldn't see her family, couldn't hug her mom, couldn't be around her sisters. Back then they had ventilators, which they called iron lungs. You can research that on Google.
Oh, I've seen those pictures. Yeah, some rough stuff.
That was her life. And I asked her before all this, I was like, how were you able to survive? Like, how do you do that? And the lesson I learned back then, which I always apply even to today, and especially in business, but also in life, you have to break things down. It's the only way you can mentally wrap your head around it. And so what happened with her in the hospital, they would start her off with some small exercises, do some pottery, learn how to improve your nervous system. Then she eventually got to a pool where she could swim, until finally, and there's a picture in my manifesto where, children go through these 2 poles, able to finally walk. And her dream was always to wear high heels, which, a lot of people probably take that for granted, but that was her vision. Like, she wanted to do that. And so she had it in her mind, and she kept pressing and keep going until that point she was able to do it. And what's amazing about her is she's 85 years old. She can still walk. A lot of 85-year-olds that never had any problems growing up aren't able to walk today. She still walks. And every day she takes a small step. Every day she has to push herself to keep going, because it's not easy. Even now, it's only getting harder, but she still takes a step. So what I learned from her, and it's the title of my book, is to take small steps, because when you take small steps, you can accomplish anything.
Yeah. Wow. That is so powerful. And it is, it's to gain that resilience and to find yourself in that place of, failure, or, in this case, in a life situation of, what do I have? I mean, 9 months old, like you're almost like being inundated or potentially inundated with the mindset of like giving up.
Yeah.
And so to think about resilience as it's a choice, right? We can say like, well, this is it. It's terrible. We can look at it, or we can go, well, what's the small step I can take to get back up?
Absolutely.
What's the small step? So we had this 9-month-old baby. Oh, that just hits me. All the way to 14 years old.
14
correct?
Years old. Yeah.
14 years old. Just that mindset to not give up after that long. And I'm sure in that, because she was taking the small steps, there was always some new glimmer of hope. Maybe it was just being able to hold on to something, or being able to move a little, that was like, okay, well, if I could do that, what's the next step, right? And what's the next step?
Absolutely. That's the power of the small step, because when you take small steps, you get small wins, which encourage you to take the next step. And so it's just going step by step so you can then get to the next one.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're bringing that into kind of the business situation we see in life, right? Like, guys, if you don't get it already, like resilience, that is the key. Like it is the not giving up. And it's not the not giving up in the sense of just kind of mindlessly just going after the same thing, but it's also not being brought down or by failures, by setbacks. It's it doesn't mean you just keep doing the same thing, bang your head against the same wall, right? There are lessons to be learned, as I'm sure you'll show us, but it's about just knowing, like, it's not the end, right? There is something that we can get out of that. So we got that in life. Now, how do we adapt that to business?
Yeah. So what I've learned after working with some great companies, and you mentioned a bunch of them, is there's really a common thread. So in life and in business. So it's not just taking steps mindlessly. It's really having 3 things. You need to know what steps to take. You need to know how to take those steps. And then, gee whiz, you have to actually take the steps. You have to take the action. If you don't do all three, you're not going to have success. So it's not just not accepting failure, but it's winning and having success, but it's not going to happen unless you get the right formula, which again, what I've discovered, it's really the what, the how, and then taking the action. And then even beyond that, which I don't talk about in my book, but it's really a foundational point, the why. Because if you don't have a big enough why, you're not going to have the propulsion to get through the down times, because you have to have something to push you through, a greater purpose. It really comes down to purpose. And that's really what sets the foundation. But after that's done, it's your what, your how, and then the action.
Yeah. So after we've kind of put ourselves into a mindset that we're going to keep going, we're going to get up, then the next step is starting to look at what it is we're trying to accomplish, how it's going to actually happen. So kind of our action plan. And then, as you're saying, actually taking the steps into action.
Correct.
Right. And we say this a lot on the show is, it's not a mystery out there how to get six-pack abs. So information isn't the problem. It's the action that we're taking to get the six-pack abs, right?
Correct.
So, so that action part is a huge, huge component that the lack of resilience can keep you from. So as we're kind of adopting this mindset, looking at taking these small steps, one question I do have is, looking back at your story, you went through business school. You mentioned, I believe, in your manifesto that you did all the right things, right? Like that's where you thought, like, okay, I'm not going to make this mistakes. I've seen it happen. You did just by going to business school. Like that was a step. Like I'm going to learn the right way. So what mistakes, like now looking back on what you've learned where the business still failed, what were the ones that you saw that you made?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, business school was fantastic. I would not be where I am today without business school. Unfortunately, business school, at least when I went, didn't really teach you what you need to be an entrepreneur. They taught you more of how to be a marketing manager, maybe a marketing director in a larger company, a corporation. It's really a training ground to go into the corporate world. And so it's very different when you're a startup, when you're a small business, and to put it really simply, there's really two foundational things you always have to keep in mind when you're running a business. And that's number one, your profitability, how much money you have, and two, cash flow. When is that money coming in? And so because I had those gaps, I didn't realize the implications of profitability. And so you mentioned the second business. We had a business where we could take a cake, put a photo on it, which is common today, but we married, we were one of the first in the country to have it. And we married it with the ability to mail it. You could literally throw the cake. UPS could throw the cake, it would survive, which is why it was so popular. But the problem with that was our shipping costs were extremely high. We had to use, FedEx and UPS. We had a lot of packaging involved, and we had dry ice. And so when you put all that up, the costs were high. And then what happened was FedEx and UPS started to raise their pricing more and more. Cost of gas went up. All of a sudden our profitability shrunk, and our cakes were already at the time, $45. There's only a certain range of price you go. And so there wasn't any more room. And then the business just didn't have enough sustainability. We didn't have enough cash or really enough profitability, because it doesn't matter what the cash is. If you're not making enough money off of it, you're not going to get to where you need to be.
Right. Like it didn't matter if the cakes were $1,000 if the profit margins weren't there.
Correct.
To make it happen.
Correct.
Yeah. So that is huge. So really paying attention to your cash flow, really paying attention, because like you said, it was great to go through business school, but they're preparing you almost for a position in a corporate world, which means this corporate business has already created a successful structure for their business, or they wouldn't be able to hire, right?
Correct.
So you're not learning all these other components about how to juggle this, how to even create profit margins, because you weren't the one who had to create it. You just had to show up and maybe maintain it or create reports on it, right?
Correct.
So with that, coming into the entrepreneurial world, what mistakes are you seeing us making?
Yeah, well, sadly today, those are two big ones. Profitability, which we hit on, which is how much money you have. But the other one I'd like to hit on is cash flow. So those are really the two main from a cash perspective, cash flow. And that's real simply, when is it coming in? And the smart thing to do is delay what's going out and expedite what's coming in. And so, for instance, when the pandemic hit, first thing I did was go through my credit card statements, say, okay, what am I not using anymore? I have a marketing agency as well as the consulting. So in the marketing agency, you buy all sorts of tools. You look at your invoices like, I didn't even know I had this, get rid of all that stuff, right? And then looking at when the money's coming in, am I up to date on my receivables? Are my clients paying me on time? Can I get paid faster? Or on the flip side, can I renegotiate the rates I'm paying? So I do web hosting. I have web hosting that I provide to my clients. I call my supplier and negotiate 50% discount, believe it or not, for a period of time because of the COVID. And so there's all sorts of opportunities like that where you can renegotiate, you can extend, you can expedite, depending on what your goal is.
That is a huge point right there too, guys. And hopefully that information has been, or that gusto, I would say, has been floating around a little more that we've been further into the pandemic. But what Tony said right there is so aligned with one of my favorite quotes that Billy Jean from Billy Jean is marketing agency, he always says, which is closed mouths don't get fed. And so you opened your mouth. You said, was there a rule that said, hey, if there's a big pandemic, call us and we'll give you 50% off? Of course not. But you just looked at what you had and go, I'm going to ask. I'm going to see what my options are. I'm going to ask. I'm going to try. Yeah. And then the thing, it was their first time. I was probably going through a pandemic as well. So they were like, now that you mention it, why not? And that's such a huge eye opener, I think, for a lot of us as entrepreneurs too, is like we go into this world because many of us are out of the box thinkers. But then there's so much information about entrepreneurs that we almost kind of get stuck in a different box. We're in this new entrepreneur box. Well, this is the way it works in my industry or and we're still in that box. So I just love that you went up and just were like, what can I do? Something different. And you didn't wait till there was a problem, right? Like you weren't losing money necessarily. You just saw that times are changing and were like, time to make some assessments.
Yeah, well, and that's a key. Anytime there's a change, your ears should perk up and say, okay, what do I have to do? Because I've said this a number of times now, but it's easier to ride a wave than create your own wave. So if there's a wave that's happening, see if you can. And that was one of the reasons I had success. So when I had Google's Agency of the Year in 2009, I rode the Google AdWords wave. When I was first looking for a job in the corporate world, the reason I got into all these big companies in the first place is back then, they didn't have any SEO. Believe it or not, there was a time they didn't have it. I was one of the first in the country to really have it down. And so I rode that wave. Now what's going on now? You're having a lot of virtual stuff. So I'm working on a virtual summit. I'm working on stuff for podcasting because I'm riding in the wave. And so you have to say, okay, what is the environment today and where is it going? Like Wayne Gretzky, famous quote, look at where the puck's going. So you got to see where it's going and make sure you're there, because in hockey, I'm not a hockey player, but if you're skating to where it's going, you're already too late. You have to be there in advance. So look at where it's going and position yourself for success, because that naturally money will flow to you. Success will flow to you. What you need will flow to you if you're well positioned for that new environment.
Yeah, that is huge. So I know there's a lot of other components that you kind of have through your manifesto and things like these basic things that we need to be looking at in order to take this resilience and actually put it into action. You need to go through some of those main points that you have there.
Absolutely. So what I found working with the great companies is they have a plan, which is really the what. So the what is really kind of what are you going to do? What's your strategy is another way to think about it. And I really break it down to two pieces. In the corporate world, they're actually married. So there's a concept called strategic planning. But from a business perspective, for small businesses, I break them down. So the first thing is, what is your strategy? And so the strategy is really how you can predictably grow. Because if you don't have predictable revenue, you're not going to have a sustainable business at the end of the day. You're not going to be able to grow. And so what I found is there's 6 factors that drive growth, regardless of the industry, the stage of the company, who's running it. It doesn't matter. It's in the 6 factors are: number 1, the markets you're serving; number 2, the products and services you're providing those markets; number 3, your value, why they would buy from you as opposed to anyone else; number 4, how do you get new blood in, new buyers; number 5, how do you increase the lifetime value of those buyers; and finally, number 6, how do you drive loyalty? How do you get those buyers to come back again and again and provide you with referrals?
Yeah, those are huge. So these 6 pieces, guys, so we're talking about strategy, and I love, and I saw that in your manifesto that you break them up, which I think is so interesting, because the strategy itself is like the process that can be used regardless of the tactic or the plan, right?
Correct.
Like the
Correct.
tactics and plans can be changed, and I think you'll go into that, but understanding that the basic strategy structure stays the same. And
Correct.
I love that you have lifetime value in there, because that's one thing a lot of entrepreneurs, especially when they're just starting out, they don't look at that and factor
Yes.
that into cost of that. Ideally, your client or customer, however they fit in your product or service, they have a lifetime value. They can be repeat customers. They can be, if they're subscribers, right? You have people who have memberships, or it's a one-time thing. You sell, I think even if we look at restaurants, there's a lifetime value. Ideally, that person's coming back, unless they're from out of town. They're a one-time. So you start to really understand how to invest in that to match up what their actual lifetime value is. But there are so many strong pieces in there, guys. I hope you're taking notes on this right now. So we come into the what, and we look at the strategy. So we've started to figure out what my value is, what I'm doing. Go through the 6 there, and then what do we do?
Yeah. So what you want to do is essentially put those things into action. And so a favorite story I have is looking back, and this is in the manifesto, the Wright brothers. Mm-hmm. So back when we were trying to figure out how to fly, which wasn't really that long ago, it's crazy, the rate of change. But back then you had Samuel Langley. Samuel Langley had all the funding, backing from the Smithsonian, all the government contacts. He had everything going for him. He was working to figure out how to fly. At the same time, you had these ragtag brothers, the Wright brothers. They had a bicycle shop. That's what they were working with. They had a bicycle shop, and they were also trying to figure out how to fly. But at the end of the day, who won? The one that figured out was the Wright brothers. So it wasn't about, here's another mindset thing. It's not about what you have. It's not about the resources you have. A lot of people, that aren't doing well, they always have the mindset of, if I had the money, I could make this work. If I had this, I can make it. That's not the truth. The truth is, it's really how you approach things, how you leverage your resources. It's not the resources, it's how you leverage them. And that really comes down to your time, your effort, and the money. And so, case in point, Wright brothers were able to fly, didn't have anything. Samuel Langley, nobody even knows who he is unless you look at the history books. And they were able to figure it out because, believe it or not, the bicycle shop helped them, because a big part of flight has to do with balance. They leveraged some of the principles they learned there and then applied it to flying, and they were the first to fly. And so it's a great story that tells you it's taking action. This is the third part. And so it's not having the mindset that I can't do it because I don't have what I need. You make what you need happen. You get in the right places, you're going to meet the right people. And at the end of the day, I love this. I think Tony Robbins talks about this, but where you are is really the result of the decisions you made in the past. For the most part, sometimes there's life chances that can affect you. If you're, born in the middle of a very impoverished country, for instance, different story. But, for the most part, the people that are listening to this, like it or not, you are where you are today because of the decisions you made, good or bad. Mm-hmm. And so the key is to make better decisions. And that's why you want to plan. This is where planning comes into play. What I learned, one thing, just tell another story briefly. I used to be a violinist, so pretty, fairly accomplished. And when I was at the conservatory, my teacher, I was learning a very difficult piece. It's called the Mendelssohn Violin Concerto. And there's a lot of notes. I'm a young kid. I just want to get to the good stuff. Like, let me blow through all this. I'll play the melody. I'll pretend I know the notes. And I learned from my teacher that to have success, you have to slow down to speed up. You have to break it down. Yes. Again, same concept. You have to break it down, learn each note, and then apply it. Unfortunately, a lot of business people, small business owners in particular, they just want to get right to it. Let me learn the how. Like people, they focus on the how, not the what, going back to the strategy. So I'm just going to run Facebook ads. I'm just going to do SEO. I'm going to do podcasts without first thinking, what are they going to accomplish and why are they doing it? And how many times have we done that and wasted money? My advertising's not working. I've done this. I've wasted hundreds of thousands of dollars hiring the wrong people. I don't even want to think about it, but hiring the wrong people, buying the wrong ads and just blowing it away. And if I took a step back and really planned it out, I would have ultimately had more success.
Yes. Yeah. They want the hacks. That's
Yeah.
like one of the most popular, search terms is the hack, right? And the
Yeah.
thing I always think about is you think about a surgeon, you don't want the surgeon who figured out the hacks. Like, what's the
No.
quick cut? You want the one who took the slow game, studied it, really mastered it, and now he can move quickly and be successful and do great surgeries because he took the time and precision to put into that. And there's a few things I want to bring in. The quote that you mentioned, there's a version of that I know as well that I love, and it's all the things that you've done, all your habits, all your choices have been perfectly fine-tuned to bring you to exactly where you are and create the life you have right now.
Yeah.
So if you're like, oh, that's great, I like how things are awesome, but if you don't, then just know that the steps you take, the actions you're taking, the habits you have are perfectly fine-tuned to bring exactly what you have right now. So if you want to change that, that's the first thing we look at, right?
Yeah.
The other thing I have to bring up in that Tony did not mention, guys, but I did see in some information in that violin story, is that you also played Sweet Child of Mine on the violin.
Oh, yes. That's funny. I didn't know you found that. Yes. Yeah. So I won a talent competition. Well, it came in second, technically. And, a 10,000 people audience, and it was crazy. Back then, I had some hair. I had like the sequence shirt, and
you dressed up.
Yeah, I dressed up. It was a big arena, and I had an electric violin, and so
That's
I bought.
amazing.
Well, here's a good example of taking a step in faith. So I was confident I could win, and the prize was $1,000. So I bought an electric violin for $1,000, and then I got paid for it by winning the competition. But it was cool. Yeah, it was very cool.
I love that. Oh, that story got even better. That is awesome. So I am very intrigued. I'm hoping that'll circle my way one day where I get to hear the violin version of Sweet Child of Mine. So that sounds amazing.
I'll send you the recording. I have it somewhere.
That'd be great. But what an amazing story behind that I didn't even know was there, was taking a leap of faith, taking a leap of belief. Because there's also the mindset in that, right? Like there's something you probably worked extra hard, really focused. You got dressed up. You did all the things to embody the person who was going to win here because something was on the line, right? Like you actually put the money in to buy it.
I did.
And then there you didn't get it back. And so that, I think that is amazing. That's huge as well. So as we are looking at this, the component that you were bringing up right now is that we need to, sorry, I just kind of lost the concentration. I got distracted by the Child of Mine thing. So,
it's a great song. I don't blame you.
Now it's in my head. I just hear Axel going. So we were talking about the Wright brothers. We were talking about them, kind of the balance and taking action and the strategy and the planning. And I think maybe that's where I was wanting to go with this is that, when you started with the strategy and then we look at creating the plan, we look at, the pieces that we're going to use. And then we talked about, taking the time, slowing down. That's what it was. So you're saying that the slowing down to speed up. And
Correct.
Again, I think it's really easy in our entrepreneurial culture to get sucked into these hacks and these tips and trying to find the short way. We're doing it on our own. And there's such a BS prevalence of supposed overnight successes, which aren't. They absolutely aren't. And it's such a disservice that is the way we hear about them and we read about them. And, just because it's the first time you heard of somebody in Forbes does not mean that they did not put in their dues to do all that work. And so stepping back, and maybe having like a little dose of that reality that it is the long game. It is not, it is not a get rich quick scheme for sure. No, game, right? So once we move into that, what do we do next?
Yeah. So action. So what I found is, and one of the reasons I created what I did was I took the 6 factors, which I call growth compounding. I didn't touch on this, but you can look at it in the manifesto. But if you do each of the factors, you actually get exponential growth. So normally people grow at 10%. If you're lucky, average business is 5 to 8%. But if you growth compound and you do each one and they compound against each other, you actually grow at 61%. So that's just kind of an aside. But to answer your question in terms of the application, the reason I created the results loop, which is my framework and the planning tool to take advantage of growth compounding, one of the things I found that shortcuts the growth curve is to simply model somebody. And so I created this, and I created probably my goal is to have the world's largest library of business models. So you don't have to create from scratch. You can look at, what's already been done. And so what I always
Yeah.
advise to take action, again, I feel like it's Tony Robbins Day, but he has a great quote on this as well. If you want to have success like someone, simply do what they're doing and you'll have the same level of success. Kind of like the decisions. It's a result of decisions. Find someone that's where you want to be. And so it could be a mentor, get a coach, someone that's already done it, not just some coach that just, wants to give advice, but someone that's actually done what you wanted to accomplish. That's one way to do it. But you could also model somebody. So look at your competitor, see how are they marketing themselves? What markets are they serving? Really look at them or people outside of your industry. Some of the biggest growth has come by looking at other industries. Look at Lyft, look at Airbnb. They're taking practices from other industries and applying it into a vertical that's never seen it before, which is driving innovation and tremendous growth.
Right. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel at every area.
Correct.
So as we come in as entrepreneurs, we may have a unique idea, or maybe it's a unique application of the area. I mean, there's so many areas that we get to be creative, unique, or different. Sometimes, and on another side, we can also go into the aisle of spaghetti sauces, guys, and see there's a reason why there is like 151 spaghetti sauce options, where we're not reinventing the wheel at all. We're just bringing our own spin on it. So there's so many places that we can do that. And at the same time, the guy who's coming in who says, I have a unique type of spaghetti sauce, isn't going to go in and go, what's also a new way to sell spaghetti sauce?
Right.
Like, he doesn't, you go,
right.
Look, we see what's working, or maybe the top 5 are doing this. We can model that. We can take from that. We can glean from that. And that's so important, because I think we're inspired. And I do that in quotes because it's not always the best place to be inspired, to just be our own unique person and be so different. That's like, well, I have to figure it all out. And I remember Amy Porterfield, actually, she's the big in kind of my industry as well as of like business coach and stuff. And she said once, like, you just, she said, you basically follow the way it's been done first. Yeah. Then you can try to tweak it, but you don't get to tweak it until you've actually done what we've all seen works, right? Like, so absolutely. Step into that place, and then you can go, you know what? I think I got a different version. But it's almost like paying homage. Like, take a moment and just do it, just see it first, and then if you find a way to tweak it, do it. But why reinvent the wheel? Why, when you can just, I mean, you got Lyft and Uber, like they, I don't know which one was first, but one of them was taking the same model, guys.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you don't have to be radically different. Like, it's amazing. And this goes back to factor number 3, which is value. Value is really why someone would buy from you as opposed to anyone else or do nothing at all. And that's great, but like, how do you make it unique? Out of your value comes your unique value proposition. And it doesn't have to be a crazy thing. Like, the way I think about it is ask your questions like what, how, when, why, basic questions you learn in grade school. But case in point, look at Domino's Pizza.
Yes.
Ridiculous growth. And they had one unique thing. They deliver it faster. Like, that's basically what they had. The pizza isn't that great. No offense, Domino's.
I know. That's sorry, any Domino's. I was going to say the same thing. But some diehard's going to be
it's like they took one thing.
Yeah.
So, like, you don't have to reinvent, like you said, the sales process and how the kids, it's just the one little thing.
You don't have to make square pizza. You don't have to, like.
No.
Yeah, and then you have something like, I don't know if it's, I know on the California side, we have like Little Caesars, and so theirs was really a price comparison. And then you have, and I use this example a lot with my clients as well, is like pizza, because pizza is such a great thing, because we all know, no matter where you are, I mean, I'm in Czech Republic, and we have tons of different pizza places. I know in the U.S., there's, they're a dime a dozen. Yeah. And they're all pizza, guys. They're all pizza. And in a lot of situations, some of them may be very much exactly the same. But their unique sales proposition, their value can be, like you said, we deliver faster, or we're closer, or we have organic ingredients. Maybe we take forever, but we have organic ingredients. And maybe we have vegan cheese. Maybe we, maybe we have weird sauces. We had a Thai curry pizza place that was really popular where I used to live in California. And that was like, the place looked like a hole in the wall. And, you probably wouldn't even want to go there, but man, you saw that delivery car everywhere for Thai curry pizza, because because it was just unique. Were they
Yeah.
fast? Were they the freshest? I don't know. They were just different. I
Yeah.
did like them, but that's the thing. Like, we didn't have to reinvent any, like, the sale. They still delivered the same way everyone else delivered, but you pick that one piece in it, then go, yeah, that's going to be me. Maybe your staff's just nicer, you know, or maybe you guys all dress like, maybe it's Chuck E. Cheese. Everyone dresses like weird mice, you know, but it's, but the pizza, the product's the same, right? Like, that's where we came down to. So I love that. So moving on from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's really what you want to do, is break it down and then go. So what I advise people is to actually go through the loop. It really depends on the stage you're at. So if you're a startup and you're newer, or if you're reinventing yourself or your business, you want to start going around the loop. So you start with your market, saying, okay, who do I need to serve? And this is a great time to reevaluate that. So is, again, like we talked about today, is the market you're serving correct for who you have today? You know, for instance, if you have, you know, a yoga studio, you're probably changing your market, right? Maybe you're moving virtual. It's a different environment. And so you want to understand, are these the right buyers for today? Do you have to go up market? Do you have to go down market? Is there a different vertical? You know, who do you want to serve? And what marries that is the products and service you're offering them. So do you change that? So for instance, I have a $2,000 course, like everybody else and their grandmother, right? But what I realized is that might be a lot of money for people in today's environment. So how can I splinter it out? How do I make it smaller? So I took my $2,000 course, turned it into a monthly membership club, and it's $97 a month. So it's more affordable. So that's kind of making it smaller. On the other side, maybe you target higher end. So if people don't have money because of the pandemic, there's probably people that do have money. So maybe go up market, go opposite of the tide, because people might all be thinking in your market, we got to lower our prices. If they're going low, you go high, right? So you go opposite. So you can go up higher. And so that's, you know, maybe you make your course $10,000 or whatever. You see what I'm saying? So you always want to change relative to the market, but they're married together, because if you change your products and your pricing, which is very much tied to your product, that's going to change your market. So they're really married. So you want to look at those simultaneously.
I love that you said, like, it's this circle, and I'm seeing, like, the circle behind you in your thing there, that you can jump in any area, and also that you're going to be visiting this often, because you may have identified your target market, like you used with the yoga example, and said, you know, we are these people local to this area. They show up for classes, and they usually show up because they live nearby or work nearby. Maybe your studio is a certain type, so it's, you know, a certain type of demographic or age that comes in. And now you're online, and now to go stereotypical, let's say the geriatric classes that you had, you know, grandma doesn't want to get online and do Zoom. She says, you know, she still calls a computer a confuser, and she's like, there's no way I'm doing that. Even though it's actually easier for her, she doesn't have to drive there anymore. But you need to now stop and go, to reevaluate this strategy and plan that you had, and revisit that. Whereas a new person is coming into this for the first time and now looking at where I am. But what I want you guys to take away from this is that it isn't a one and done. It's something we always need to be growing and adjusting with, because the one and done's, the one who goes, we already figured that out, they're the ones who were making CDs and are no longer doing that anymore. They're like, no, we got it. We're not going to adjust. We're not going to move, right? They're the record store that it didn't reinvent themselves, because they said they figured it out, right? So it's always something that you need to have in mind, to come back to and find yourself where you are in that circle and jump back in following that. And when I'm saying the circle, you'll see what he has in his manifesto. It's a nice illustrated kind of version of this circle.
It's the results loop. I call it the results loop. But it's also the secret. It's the secret to growth as well, though, because if you're stuck and you can't get to the next level, you can leverage something called the Ansoff matrix. So the Ansoff matrix looks at your markets and your offerings in a matrix. So there's 4 boxes, and you ask yourself the question, you know, can I offer new markets, new offerings, or can I provide existing markets new offerings? You know, and you can play with those in the 4 boxes and say, okay, how do I expand? So as an example, you know, on the East Coast of the United States, we have, you know, Dunkin' Donuts, right? Very big coffee. And then at one point they were, I don't know if they were consciously going through this process, but this is what they did essentially. They say, okay, we're strong in breakfast. How do we expand into lunch? So they're taking their existing market and expanding products and services. Or they might also go the other way and say, look, we have coffee. can we expand into another market? And the way they did that is just a different geographic market. Maybe they're moving into the next town, but it could also be, we're gonna now serve teens. And they're gonna reposition their marketing to say, look at coffee for teens, which probably is not the best idea, but
decaf coffee for teens.
yeah, decaf coffee. But that's the thing. You can use this. So you're right. It's never done. It's always, and that's why it's an infinity symbol, because it's recursive. You're always going back to it, and you're always applying it, because it's the secret of growth. Just look at the loop and say, okay, what do I have to change? Is it my market, my offering, or for those markets offerings, do I have to change the products or services or the number of buyers, etc.?
I love that. It's so important to identify where we're at and what we're doing and who not only our value that one time. And again, like I see this with so many people come to business and with business coaches, is they create that business plan, that roadmap, they figure out their USP and they got it all written down, and then that's it. It's a closed book.
Yeah, no.
And then and that's not what it is. I love this infinity loop, guys. Infinity, it just keeps going. And that's where we're going to find that growth, this results loop that you're talking about. So if we're doing this, so we've gotten strategy, we started planning, we're looking at those 6 pillars, which I want to just like get that written somewhere for all you guys, because that was amazing, those 6 pieces you had in the strategy. And then from there was it action after that, or what was
so it's the what, which is the strategy, which I call growth compounding, which is the 6 factors themselves. The next stage is the planning, which is how you're going to do it, which is the application in the plan, and then the last one is taking the action.
Right.
And so how do you take action? So the way I advise you do it is you apply what's in the loop to whatever you're working on at that point in time. So what you want to do is say, okay, where am I weak in the loop, and how do I address that problem? Which sounds very theoretical. So what does that mean? Well, say you have a website, or maybe you're doing a new website. Are the markets you're serving actually on the website? It's unbelievable. Who do you serve? I serve everybody. Okay, well, maybe you change that, and you actually, yeah, exactly. You define the markets, right? Which is great. Now do the people going to your website see that? Do they self-identify and say, hey, I'm on, there's a blog post.
Yeah. Hey, that's me.
Right.
That's huge.
Right. You ever walk into a room, like, I've been to churches before. You go into a church and everyone is, 80 years old. I'm half that age. Might feel a little awkward. So people self-identify, right? Yeah. So when you go in to that building, or, maybe it's the opposite. You go in a restaurant, everyone's 20. Wait, am I in the right spot? What's the geezer doing here? So you have to make sure there's what's called message market match. You want to make sure it's aligned. And so first step is take what you have here and put it in your marketing, put it on your website, put it in your ads, make sure that aligns. And then eventually, depending on where you're weak, use campaigns, so you want to have a campaign that addresses these. Maybe it's a campaign to bring new people in. Make sure you're applying your value proposition. So like we talked about, now you're unique, apply that and put it into your marketing. And so I created this results loop for strategic planning. There's also a results loop for execution, which says, okay, now that you have this, where are you going to apply it? Because again, if it's just theoretical, or you're just thinking about it and it, but you're not applying it, it's not going to do anything. It's the application at the end of the day that gets the results.
Absolutely. So do we have any preview of like what kind of goes in the action loop then? Like, are there certain components or areas we're supposed to look at, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So as an example, I probably should rename this, but I have what's called the execution loop. But with that one, it first looks at your markets, the same question. And then it looks at kind of your offer. So what are you going to provide for your offer, which is relative to the value you have. So one thing we can talk about is, all right, now that I have this down, how do I actually get a new buyer? And the fundamental thing here that I'll speak to, because most business people don't understand this either. At the end of the day, your success is relative to the value you provide. And so there's always an exchange. So for instance, right now, there's an exchange of someone hearing me wax on in exchange for, so I'm getting attention, and what you're getting is, or the audience is hopefully getting some value out of this. So you're getting some valuable content, and I'm getting time. And with that time, I'm building trust and authority and all these great things. The next stage from there, there's an exchange of value, which is usually even more valuable content. I'm getting that in exchange for contact information. so I can build more of a relationship. So maybe I have some kind of, downloadable, and it has, requests for your name and email. And then the last one, which is where most people go right to, is they say, okay, I'm going to sell my stuff, which is great, but you always have to keep in mind it's an exchange of what they want, which is the result. They're not buying your thing.
Right.
They're buying the result that it gives. In exchange, you get money. And so that's why in my companies, everything is called results. Because at the end of the day, that's what someone's buying. So the exchange is the value for the results. So when you do your marketing, you have to keep that in mind. Say, okay, what value am I providing the market with my offer?
Yeah.
And that offer could be, again, something where it's free, like this, where they're consuming information. It could be where they exchange for the contact information, or it could be ultimately the result. Most businesses, they go right to the result. Well, that's all great. Just give me the people at the bottom. The problem is 2% of people are in market. You need to start at the top of the funnel and get people coming through so you have a larger piece. Because if you're just working at the bottom of the funnel, the people that are ready to buy today, very small market. And at that point, it's harder and more expensive to convert them to you, because the smart marketers are already doing what I just explained, and they're already talking to them. So you're getting the breadcrumbs. So you don't want to do that. But 99% of businesses approach, especially small businesses, approach sales and marketing that way.
Yeah, a lot of people go right to, and they also skip a lot of that courting process, and they go, what I heard it a lot is one of the best analogies is like dating. You go and you see that person in the coffee shop, you're like, oh, they're kind of cute, and then you walk up and you're like, hey, do you want to get married? And they're like, whoa, they might have actually been interested, but they never have a chance, because now they just know the answer to that is no. The answer to that is no, guys, because your question was crazy. And so getting in there and starting at the other levels of value, like you're saying, and offering that and letting them experience what that's like. Because nobody is buying. Nobody is going, you know what I really want? I want sales expertise. Right. No one actually wants sales expertise. You know what they want? They want to make the sale. They want the 5 clients. Right. No one's like, gosh, sales expertise sounds so exciting. It's the results that having sales expertise brings them. And that tiny shift in the way you approach and the way you think about it is so, so huge. Absolutely. That goes for your approach. That goes for your process. That goes for your copywriting. It goes for everything in what you do as a business, is to shift that to make sure that you're looking at giving them the results they're looking for. Absolutely. So I love that you brought that up.
Thank you.
So is there anything else? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you can go even deeper with that, with the why. Like, remember we talked about purpose in your own business and why you do something. It can work the same way with the prospects you're targeting. So yes, they want, at the end of the day, they want a sale, but why do they want the sale? Is it to get their kid through college? Right. Is it so they can have retirement? Like, getting down layer, and this is something I learned from the CMO of ADP when I worked for them. She always had me ask the question why 5 times.
Yes.
Okay, so why do they want to do this? Because you dig down, you get to the psychological part of what really matters, and that propels them even faster through the sales process.
Yes. I got excited because we have a worksheet that we use with our clients and most people who've been on any of our things know about it, called Uncovering Your Deepest Motivation. And we push them to go 7 layers deep and basically asking, whatever your answer is, the next question is, why is that important to you?
Yes.
So if you say, I want it because I want to make more money. Well, why is that important to you? Well, because then I can provide for my family. Why is that important to you? Correct. Because I don't want them to be in fear that they don't have, a roof over their head. And why is that important to you? Yeah. And what you get down to is something so core of your being, of your essence, of your drive, that willpower is not going to stick with you guys. Like, willpower is willpower. It has a shelf life and it will give in. But something like that you hit that core essence of what you can hang on to when the going gets tough, that's going to be the thing that gets that sale, right? So let's go jump back to the top of that. You're like, it was just a sale, but it wasn't. There was so much more underneath that. So I love that you brought that up. Is that why? Yeah, it fits everywhere. And, and I know a lot of people may see that and go, oh, that's foofy, that's, soft. But if you really want to be successful, that is going to be that strength builder right there. And so you can think it's foofy all you want, but, someone's going to be foofy all the way to the bank.
That's right. That's right.
So before my last question, Tony,
sure.
Can you please tell everyone where they can find you, what you have going on, any offers?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of what I talked about today is in a manifesto. So I have a book coming out called Steps Grow Profits. I took some of the best stuff out of that book and put it in a manifesto, and it's absolutely free. So free as in, I'm not even asking for your contact information. I just want people to get the information because it's so valuable. I think it's needed for especially a time like we're living through now. So that's at smallstepsmanifesto.com.
Yes. Awesome. Yeah, I was actually surprised. I went in there to check it out, and I was reading all the stuff, and then I was like, oh yeah, let me see it. And then it just appeared. I was like, oh my God, I didn't even have to enter anything. So
Yeah.
it's super available, guys, and there's tons of information, a lot of these stories and how they connect, and beautiful illustrations for a lot of these concepts that may seem kind of heavy at first, but you do a great job at just making them really easy and consumable. So so awesome. So check that out. And what was the site again for that?
It's smallstepsmanifesto.com.
Perfect. So we'll have that down below as well, guys, so you can check that out. So now, what is one thing? We've talked about a lot of awesome things that can be done. So if somebody is like they heard some of the mistakes you mentioned. They're like, I've never really looked at this. I did the entrepreneur thing where I just dove in, and maybe I'm keeping afloat. Maybe you've done exceptionally well. Maybe you've gone to a stalemate where you're like, I'm okay, but I haven't hit that growth. Maybe, and perhaps the question I'm going to ask you, Tony, maybe it's different for those, or maybe there's one thing that regardless of where they are, they can do. But what is one thing that someone in this position who's like, I need to step it up. What can they do? What should they focus on?
Yeah, so I would look at the loop, and depending on your business, there's really two scenarios. If you're trying to reinvent yourself or you're starting out, go around the loop sequentially. So start with your markets and say, okay, am I serving the right market? If you're already established, start at the end of the loop. So start with loyalty, because that's the lowest hanging fruit, because you can get business for free. So that means going back and asking for referrals. It also means going and seeing past clients, can they buy again? What I did is I went through my list of buyers and I'm calling them up, because as business slows down on my agency, for instance, why not call people I worked with 3-4 years ago that had great results, see if they want to come back in again. So what you want to do, again, if you're newer, start with the markets. If you're more established, start with loyalty. And the other thing you could do is if you really don't know where to start, you can go to resultsscore.com. You can actually go and get a scoring on all these. Again, that's also free, and it'll give you a score, and it'll actually tell you which step you should do, if you want to get more insights into that.
That's awesome. That is a great place to start, guys, to try to analyze. And I know something else that you've mentioned before is like just even writing down like 3 steps that you need to accomplish. And like within a quarter or something to reach a specific goal. Just getting that clarity on that what can also be like a huge step as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just once you get those markets and you figure which one you're going to start with, just like I said, just get one market and just go through the loop with that one market and say, okay, what products am I going to sell them, or services?
Right.
Why would they buy from me? Just go. And it's very simple. As an example, I took my daughter is a Girl Scout. I took the Girl Scout troop through the loop in 20 minutes, and they significantly increased their sales. So I said, okay, who's your market? Oh, mom and dad. Well, great. That's one. How about the neighbors? You just go through and define your markets and the products. What's your best selling product? Well, it happens to be Thin Mints and Samoas. Well, when you're back then you could actually sell the cookies outside of a grocery store. You can't do that now. But I said, when you first see someone coming up, what's the first cookie you offer them? Well, you offer them the Thin Mints. Why? Because we know they're predisposed to buy that. Then what do? Well, you, from a loyalty perspective, offer them maybe the next bestseller, and then give them another one, and all of a sudden, a lifetime value. So you can apply this, and Girl Scouts did it in, like I said, radically increased their sales, and it is a 20-minute exercise.
I love it. I'm looking forward. I want to see that in the manifesto, the Girl Scout case study.
Yeah, I got to put that in there.
You got to put that in. That's a great one. Well, thank you so much for all the value that you have brought, all the details, guys. I mean, I just imagine this is what you get for free. What else Tony has for you guys. So are there any last words or anything else you'd like to share with our listeners before we wrap up?
Well, again, I would just go back to what I said before. To have success, slow down to speed up. I mean, that's a critical thing. In addition to the small steps, take the small steps, but slow down to speed up, and then you're going to have the success that you're looking for.
Yes. Guys, listen to that, especially in our world of burnout and chaos and all these things that are getting to us, man. Slowing down has so much value. If you've seen some of our other shows, we have doctors on here telling you all the reasons why slowing down actually brings you more genius and aha moments. This is real stuff. So I love that. Thank you for those parting words.
You're welcome.
You guys, make sure to get in touch with Tony on social media or at meettonyg.com. As always, you can connect with us at My Design Life Show and at Tanyamfk on Instagram and learn more about our courses, workshops, and coaching to grow your business and create a life you love at Tanyamfk.com. If you like this episode, then make sure to subscribe, follow, and be notified when our next episode is up by clicking that bell now. And remember, your someday starts today. Make it the best. I'm Tanya MFK, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us. You can catch us every week at 1 p.m. EST live on the My Design Life Show Facebook page and on YouTube at the Tanya MFK channel. See how the challenges go by following us on Facebook and Instagram at My Design Life Show and at Tanya MFK. Do you have a method, tip, or hack you'd like to share or explore? Submit to be a guest or suggest a topic by visiting mydesignlife.show.